Good afternoon. Welcome to the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. Thank you for joining us for our August Lunch and Learn. As we continue our theme of a salute to veterans, we are pleased to welcome Ms. Sharon Box, who is the Assistant Director over Military Personnel Records at the National Personnel Records Center of the National Archives and Records Administration. Welcome, Ms. Box.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Joy, for the invitation and for allowing me to share some insights about the National Personnel Records Center and the records in our holdings. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today's Lunch and Learn. As Joy said, I'm Sharon Box. I'm the Assistant Director for Military Personnel Records at the National Personnel Records Center. And we're located in St. Louis, Missouri, roughly 400 miles on I-70 from the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. I began my career with the National Archives and Records Administration in 2014 as a reference manager for military personnel records. To my career with NARA, I served in the United States Air Force for almost 28 years, primarily in the field of logistics. And I now had the opportunity to provide a service to my fellow veterans, their families, and other members of the community. Next slide, please. So during this session, I will share a little history about the National Personnel Records Center, how we transitioned from a demobilized records division in the 1920s to where we are today. I will also go over the array of records we have in our holdings when the transfer of records ceased coming to our agency. I will also share some information about the records we have access through our partnership with the service departments. We had some recent changes to our online web portal, eVetRecs, and I will walk you through the portal and go over other ways to submit for military records later in the presentation. I will have a picture depiction of our end-to-end fulfillment process as far as processing requests and share the approximate time it takes to process those requests. For emergency requests, we ensure emergency requests like burials, medical emergencies, natural disasters are prioritized. So I will go over how they should be submitted. Lastly, I will go over the military records transition from the ownership of the service departments and how they become archival records and become the property and of the National Archives and Records Administration. Next slide, please. The mission of NARA is to preserve the records of the United States, make them available to the American people. This concept for the National Archives to safeguard and to protect the records of our nation can be traced back to the formative decades of our country's history. However, this concept didn't come into fruition until June 19th of 1934. On that date, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed into legislation creating the National Archives as an independent agency. Also in the presentation, I have a timeline showing the National Personnel Records Center's transition through the years and how we evolved. Okay, so let's go into further detail about the National Personnel Records Center. So the National Personnel Records Center has two programs in two separate facilities. Together, the two facilities and the staff store over 4 million cubic feet of military and civilian records, medical records, records relating back to the Spanish-American War. On the picture on the right, the Civilian Personnel Records Center, which is an annex to the National Personnel Records Center, is a retrofitted limestone cave in Valmeyer, Illinois. It's roughly 40 miles southeast of St. Louis, Missouri. The staff there relocated to this facility from Winnebago in 2008. CPR, the Central Civilian Personnel Record Center, which I'm going to call CPR from this point forward, stores official personnel records of former civilian employees, mostly federal agencies worldwide. The records date back from the mid 1900th century to present. Uh, the OPS, the official personnel records, retired to the center roughly 120 days after federal employment. So after I transition from federal employment, my records will go to the Civilian Personnel Records Center. Most civilian personnel records are held at NPRC, are the legitimate, and they fall under the agency who actually transitioned the records to us. So that agency is responsible for protecting the individual privacy of the living subject of those records under the Privacy Act of 1974. So, plainly stating it, so access to those records are the authority of that agency. So, for the official personnel records, they are strictly regulated by OPM. So, therefore, OPM will dictate the policy of handling and disposing of those records, not NARA. The Military Personnel Record Center function, which is where I'm located in St. Louis, and that's the picture on the left, stores and provides access to more than 2.3 million cubic feet of records documenting the service of U.S. service members, the military members for all the service branches. The staff transitioned to this facility from the facility on Page Avenue in 2011. The facility is massive. It's roughly 474,000 square feet, and it has roughly 276,000 feet dedicated for record storage alone. Our staff who work in that facility respond to 1.6 million records requests each year, and that equates to approximately 6,000 requests each day. Next slide, please. So in this slide, in the picture at the bottom left, that is our front desk and our entrance to the National Personnel Records Center. But behind that desk is the NARA's Archive Research Room. The research room at the National Archives of St. Louis is open by appointment only. It's open Monday through Friday from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. And if you want to make an appointment with our research services staff, you would log into archives.gov and search for National Archives at St. Louis. And once you get into that page, you will go to the St. Louis events page to make an appointment. However, if you happen to have any questions about the appointments or anything on that page, please send an email to stlARR.archives@nara.gov, and they would gladly answer all of your questions. The other three pictures are our record storage bays. So at One Archives Drive, we have 15 separate bays, and the bays, like I said, holds 2.3 million cubic feet of military records and some civilian records of specific data series. The facility has a layout that has specific specifications for long-term storage for the permanent holdings. The storage bays are independent rooms with fireproof walls and doors to isolate any fires. And we keep in mind the fire of 1973, which we'll discuss a little bit later. When we transitioned to this facility, and prior to us transitioning to this facility, there had to be a test done to assess that we would not damage any records, and no records could be burned significantly like the fire in 1973. So the test was done with roughly 300 boxes in one of the storage bays. So they lit some papers up in that location just to determine how much would burn. And the test was successful. So keep in mind, and please note, no actual records of the holdings were used in the test, so everything was just fine. Each of the bays are temperature controlled for the type of records that's held there. Excuse me. The shelving units in each of the bays, so they are 15 shelves high on the first floor, and then and they have ladder access to get to the higher boxes, the 15th, 14th, 15th boxes. But on the second floor and the third floor, we have catwalks, which the boxes and the shelves are 7 high, making it for a total of 29 boxes high or 29 shelving units high. So it's quite the bay and quite the abundance of records, as you can see just by the pictures. The boxes on each of the shelves, as you see, are too deep. So actually, you can't see the too deep. You can see the front, but on one of the pictures in the side, you can notice that it's too deep. So when we send a searcher out to look for records, they would, if they need to get to that second box, and say if they're on the first floor, so they'll have to climb that ladder, get to that first box, pull that first box out, put it on the ladder, get to the second box, go in and find the record that they're looking for, retrieve that record, put the box back in its respective place, and then get the other box off the ladder and put it in its respective place. So if you're afraid of heights, working in the stacks would probably not be right for you. And also, you would find that if someone calls our customer service and says, why don't you just go out there and get my record? I can't see why you just can't go out there and get my record. You can see why. That is more complicated than reaching into a file cabinet and just pulling the record. So it's quite the feat, and we have some amazing staff that do it each and every day, and they do a phenomenal job. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the Valmeyer facility. So this is the limestone cave that I was telling you about, and this is when it was in progress of being built. So it's the underground space that has been retrofitted and adapted for commercial use. And so because the temperature is naturally around 60 to 70 degrees, there's a significant cost savings in temperature and humidity control. And the underground storage is less expensive than above ground storage, and there's quite a bit of room for expansion and enhanced security. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the timeline that provides a depiction of the establishment and the history of the National Personnel Records Center. So I'll touch on most of them. In the 1920s is when the demobilized records division was created, centralizing military personnel records, medical records, and organizational records for the very first time. In the 1930s, the National Archives was established as an independent agency. In June of 1949, as part of a reorganization of the executive branch of the government, that's when General Services Administration was created and absorbed the National Archives. In the 1960s, GSA combined military personnel records facility and the civilian personnel facility to create who we are today, the National Personnel Records Center. I'll talk about the fire of 1973 in the coming slides. I have lots of information to share with you there. On October 19th, 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed legislation separating the archives from GSA, effective April 1st, 1985. The newly renamed National Archives and Records Administration was once again an independent agency, and we've been there ever since. Beginning in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the military departments began transitioning to electronic record systems and ceased sending over paper records. And I'll go into more detail as far as the windows that occurred later on in the briefing when I discuss the holdings. I think it's kind of interesting because I served during that period of time, and I just recall I went into the Air Force in 1986, and I remember the base that I was actually stationed at. Where was I? I was at Dover Air Force Base when this began, as far as the transitioning into more electronic records. So it was great just to see that happen before my very eyes, just like in the world we live in today, we're fast moving. Um, our civilian personnel records annex, like I said, moved over into the cave in Valmeyer, Illinois in 2008, and the National Personnel Records Center for Military Records. And our main headquarters moved here to One Archives Drive in 2011. Let's see. Oh, so lastly, I want to share that the development of our case management and reporting system. So that's how we process requests, work our cases, communicate and provide responses to our customers, our email recs system, which is how we work with our fellow federal agencies to order records, and our eVet rec system, which I was telling you about earlier, as far as how you will enter requests into the system. They were created and updated and enhanced to make it easier for veterans, federal agencies, and other customers to submit new requests, as well as allowing our technicians to expedite their response time and to track requests from the receipt to closure. And I have a slide presentation just to show our end-to-end fulfillment process. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've been alluding to the fire here, in a few slides earlier. So this is where we are today. So this picture is of a building that's now it's roughly over 52 years when this fire occurred shortly after midnight, July 12, 1973. This massive fire occurred at the National Personnel Records Center, where the military personnel records were at 9700 Page Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri. The fire completely damaged the sixth floor of the six-story building. And I'll just, say a quick note, that building still remains today. It's no longer a six-story building, it's a five-story building. There was a grandfather clause regarding the sprinkler system compliance. And odd enough, during this time of the fire, GSA was in the process of awarding a contract to retrofit the building with a sprinkler system. And it just didn't happen in time. And it took the fire department multiple days to get the fire under control. Following the fire, the most immediate concern wasn't necessarily, well, the fire was important, but the water, when it because they had to pour just massive amounts of water, millions and millions of gallons of water onto the building, and what's in the building, our permanent records. So it was extremely concerning. And of course, today, not only are sprinklers required, but there's a specific performance standards that has to be met and other controls that must be in place to prevent a fire from occurring like that ever again. Next slide, please. Okay, so this picture shows the tent city that's outside of the facility, and you may be able to see the facility in the back. And like I said, it's still standing today. So controlling the mold was a concern, and also how to go about drying the millions of water-soaked records. So initially, NPRC shipped the water damaged records in plastic milk crates to a temporary facility at the Civilian Personnel Records Center in Winnebago, where they swiftly constructed drying racks to lay the records out so that they can dry. And so there was a ton of volunteers to help, create and shelving and assemble the shelving to make that happen. Then it was discovered that McDonnell Douglas Aircraft Corporation in St. Louis had drying facilities, vacuum drying facilities. So they allowed NPRC to divert the water damaged records there for treatment. And the vacuum drying process in that chamber had to be utilized. And it simulated the temperature and pressure conditions of space missions, which is just amazing. Even when I think about it, I would have loved to seen it back then. I wouldn't have loved to see the fire, but to see that process. But the chamber was large enough to accommodate over 2,000 of those plastic milk crates of water damage records. And then once they were inside the that chamber, the technicians lowered the air temperature to a freezing point and then filled the room with dry air, which simulated squeezing the water molecules out of the paper. And it was successful. It was very, impressive. I've seen some video, and I'm sure you can go on YouTube and see that as well. It was great to see as far as how they went about doing that. So for each chamber load, they were able to extract approximately 8 pounds of water per container, the equivalent of nearly 8 tons of water per each session. So they did quite a bit. So in addition to the two or more supplemental drying chambers that were provided by the McDonnell Douglas staff, NPRC also sent records to Nassau, and they had a facility in Ohio, and they also performed the same task for us in drying out the records. Unfortunately, the fire destroyed approximately 16 to 18 million OMPFs. However, we were able to salvage 6.5 million of the burned records. So the records that were impacted were Army records, 80% of the Army records. So if you were discharged between November 1st, 1912 and January 1st, 1960, the likelihood of having a damaged record was likely, other than if it happened to be charged out to the VA. For the Air Force records were arranged alphabetically. So personnel that were discharged between September 25th, 1947 and January 1st, 1964, any names after Hubbard, James E. Hubbard specifically, were damaged. So 75% of the Air Force records were damaged. Next slide, please. So this is an example of damaged OMPF and significant charring. These are the records that we still have in our holdings today. And with each passing day, veterans from World War II and Korea have passed on. So we're seeing fewer of these requests. And we have to make judgments on which of these requests we allow our staff to handle, because we don't want to damage them any further because they're so fragile. We have safeguards and controls in place when we pull the records. Our preservation staff, the archival preservation staff, they triage the records for us to ensure that further damage does not occur. They have special expertise for handling these records, and I'm going to share some of the technology that they've done here lately, which is also very impressive. So the bay in which these records are stored at a very low temperature, somewhere around 50 degrees, and also at a low humidity rate, also, so that they don't get further damaged. Next slide, please. Okay, so in handling and processing burnt files as new technology becomes available, the NARA preservation staff have made tremendous strides in recovering content via various methods. So in this photo, it shows that ink burns at a different rate than paper due to the differences in the chemical composition and structure. I would need a preservation person here to tell you how it works specifically, but it's absolutely amazing. So they use the infrared technology, and the staff are able to recover the content because it pulls the ink, to the forefront when they have their camera, and they're able to take a picture of that document and retrieve the information that we're looking for, because it's the information that we really want, right? It's not necessarily the paper, it's the information that we need. The benefits of digitizing burned files using this specific infrared technology to recover information has been amazing as far as it's reducing the handling, and it's been able for our reconstruction team to reconstruct individuals' basic service information. Next slide, please. So, we are often asked, what if veterans' records are destroyed and the veteran needs to show proof of service? Even though 6.5 million records were salvaged, in many cases, records were lost completely and we can't reconstruct the entire record. So, in the years following the fire, NPRC collected a number of organizational and auxiliary records, and they used to reconstruct the basic service to verify an individual's military service. So, we use morning reports, and those are the daily reports that show when a veteran or military member was present for duty, if they were on leave, if they were detached for duty, if they were in the hospital, if they were promoted, disciplined. It has a number of pieces of information that we can use to reconstruct service. We also use pay vouchers. During World War II, they used this pay vouchers quite a bit, and they are part of NARA's permanent records. So we use those documents to reconstruct service. Our staff also pulled together from a number of other sources. We source out through our fellow NARA record centers to see if they have any information and available in their holdings. We reach out to the VA to see if the veteran filed any claims, and we would pull all that information to create a document that we call a NA 13038. And it's the equivalent of a separation document to show proof of service. And pretty much we want to show that when the veteran entered in the service, when they were discharged from the service, and their character of their discharge. So we would extract that information. Our staff would type it into this 13038, and they would authenticate it by putting a raised seal or a digital seal on the document, and send it out to the veteran electronically or through the mail. And that document can be used by the veteran or the family member to take to the VA as proof of service for benefits. So it'll be accepted just like the DD-214. Next slide, please. Okay, so some more recent events. The pandemic impacted the NPRC in a huge way. We have 15 different warehouses or bays, each with 40 square feet, holding over 250,000 boxes of records. During the pandemic, the government had strict controls about the number of people that could come into the facility at any given time. And keep in mind, these records were not digital. Instead of having the 600 people come into the building each day, we were limited to roughly 70. Because of this, we had a historical growth in the number of pending cases in our backlog in all the functional areas. At one point, our backlog grew to over 6,000 pending cases, which was massive. During this time period, we were only able to respond to the most urgent requests like burials or medical emergencies. So we could not answer every request that our customers wanted from us. Since then, we're past that. We have fully recovered, and we have no backlog, that I'm glad to say. So over the past year, our pending cases, and at this time, we're roughly about a week and a half worth of work. So we should be able to respond to most of our customers quickly, with an exception if records need to be reconstructed. It'll take us a little bit longer. We also deployed our digital delivery technology, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We update our eVetRex application, which is a web portal that allows the public to request and submit for records. We updated it with allow for digital signatures, and we also use ID.me to authenticate who a person is that's requesting our records. During the pandemic, we partnered with the VA in a number of collaborations where they are doing a mass pull of our records, and they are digitizing our records for us, and they're ingesting them into their system called the Veterans Benefit Management System, VBMS. And once they digitize the records, they are sharing those records with NPRC, and that's actually proving to be great. So the VA, as of this month, have digitized 10.9 million OMPS for NPRC, and the VA has committed to continuing to digitize records, of course, in support of VA claims. They are digitizing records to support our reference, and they're also um, digitizing records to support future claims. During the pandemic, the volume of receipts that we received was roughly 21,000 requests every week. At the height of the pandemic, we were at roughly 30,000 requests each week. Today, we are at around 26,000 requests each week. So, and our ability to respond to requests swiftly, and I also put as far as our increased requests is because Congress has legislated, some expansion of rights and benefits to veterans, which has been great. And I've had a few listed here, like our honoring our PACT Act, and that is fully named. It's the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson honoring our promises to address comprehensive toxics act, and it expands care for veterans for toxic exposures. The Camp Lejeune Justice Act, and that addresses the exposure to contaminated water, and the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act, and that is due to herbicides like Agent Orange. So we have a number of requests that are coming in, quite a few here lately for Camp Lejeune, and we've been processing them quickly and working with the VA to digitize those records as swiftly as possible so that they're more readily available to the veterans and their family. Earlier, I mentioned the system that we respond to is CMRS, our case management reporting system, and that was built in the early 2000s, and there was a desperate need for replacement, so we deployed a new platform, Salesforce, and that was deployed on April 7th of this year. We also updated our EVET Recs to comply with the Cases Act. So when anyone, as far as federal agencies, respond to someone electronically, they have to validate who it is that's requesting this information. And I'll have a demonstration that I'll share with you later. And there are other ways to submit, which I will also go into detail. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an overview of our NPRC holdings. NPRC holds 45.8 million OMPS. This is our primary collection, and it's what's referenced most. 60% of our requests are for the DD-214 separation document. That's what most veterans and their families use for benefits. We also get requests for verification of participation in specific campaigns, because some people need that entitlement for federal service and for their leave time. We also provide verification of awards and decoration entitlements. I must note that NPRC does not issue awards and medals, so if anyone would want the issuance or replacement medals, they would need to reach out to the specific military department, or they would need to purchase them through a commercial vendor. The individual health records, also known as service treatment records. Those are medical records that follow the military member throughout their military career, depending on their service branch and time that they serve. Sometimes the service treatment records are included in an envelope with the official military personnel record, and sometimes service treatment records are treated as a separate collection. So I recall when I would PCS from base to base, it would be separate. I would carry them to my next unit, and I would turn it into the orderly room, and they would process them accordingly. We also have clinical or hospital records, the inpatient treatment records from military medical facilities from all over the world. We have those. We also have outpatient medical treatment records for dependents and retirees. And as I stated earlier, we have organizational and auxiliary records that are mainly used for reconstruction purposes in the loss of the fire. Next slide, please. Okay, so this chart further illustrates the records that we have at the National Personnel Records Center by service branches and where the records are and how they can be received. Excuse me. In the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the Military Service Department stopped retiring official military personnel records to NPRC instead of retaining them in-house electronically. This change happened and was implemented by the Navy in 1995, by the Marine Corps in 1999, the Army in 1992, and the Air Force in 2004. For a while, we were limited to the electronic records that we had access to. The electronic records and, excuse me, the electronic records personnel systems employed by the military service departments vary. The Department of Defense maintains a web-based application, which is called Defense Personnel Records Information Retrieval System, DPRIS. And that acts as a conduit to retrieve images of the documents from each service department's electronic systems. So all the military service departments approved of NPRCs having access to retrieve electronic personnel records for the purpose of responding to correspondence requests from veterans and other stakeholders on their behalf. NPRC referrals to the service departments were reduced dramatically by having access to DPRIS. Next slide. So it's important to distinguish the difference between service treatment records and your hospital records. So when you submit a request and ask us for your medical records, we're going to send you your service treatment records. We're not going to be looking for it. We're not going to look for if you were any hospital records unless you specifically state that you were at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in 1990, and then we will actually go and look for that. So it's two different series of records. So it's really important that if you're looking for hospital records, you need to tell us the hospital facility, the year of treatment, and normally we need the patient's social security number. Next slide, please. So the location of service treatment records are somewhat complex and can be in a number of places. So if someone tells you that they know where your service treatment records are, I would not believe them because they can be, sometimes we're not sure until we get the record and we ask them additional questions. So for years, they were retired at the National Personnel Records Centers, and sometimes they would be combined with the official personnel records, and sometimes they would be retired separately. If you separated from the military and you went to the VA to file a claim immediately, the record went straight to the VA and never came to NPRC. But if you got out after out of the military, and if you filed a claim with the VA later, the VA would come to the NPRC and request a record. So we transfer roughly 6,000 to 7,000 records to the VA weekly. And their practice for decades was once they got the record from us, they would take the documents out that they need to adjudicate the claim. They would ingest those records into the VA claim folder, and they would return the rest of the folder to us, less those documents. So sometimes those folders, if you ask for a complete copy of your medical record and you find that there are some things missing, they may be part of that claim folder. So this is really common for the past few decades. Let's see, and I know time is going quick for me. So this also got complicated even in the 90s. The service departments also stopped retiring service treatment records to us. Instead, they began retiring them directly to the VA. And this was not accomplished at the same time. So the Army started retiring them in October of 1992, the Navy, January 1994, Air Force, June 1994, U.S. Marine Corps, May of 1994, and the Coast Guard of April 1988. So as a result of that change, NPRC does not have access to the modern treatment records. Most of those records have been digitized in HAMES. We do not have access to HAMES. But if someone writes to us and asks us for a complete copy of their personnel and medical records, we're going to give you what we have, and we'll refer you to the appropriate place for anything that we do not. Next slide, please. Okay, so just like I said, we don't have access to Hames, but these would be the locations that we would refer you to if we did not have access to the records that you were seeking, the medical records that you're seeking. And I also must add, in 2015, the VA stopped their long practice of taking part of the records out to adjudicate the claim. They just digitize everything and send the complete record back to NPRC. Next slide, please. Okay, so this one just talks about clinical records a little bit more, including dependent records. So a lot of times veterans who were treated in hospitals don't remember the date that they were treated. Especially, I know as I get older, I forget exactly what happened in bases that I've been assigned to. But if you can get us the year, that would be helpful. We'll look a couple years before ahead and a couple years back. If we're not successful, we'll go back to you and ask for additional records or additional information, and then we'll also let you know if there are negative results. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a list of other records held by NPRC. They are called auxiliary records, and I'll let you see the list there. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do I submit a request? So you can submit a request via mail or fax on the standard form 180. You can mail it to One Archives Drive, St. Louis, Missouri 63138. You can fax it to 314-801-9195. Our preferred method is for you to go through EvetRex, which I will walk you through right now. And you are on the next slide. So this is the landing page. In that little blue box where it says Veteran Service Records, you will click on that box. You'll have the option to say if you want to have the downloaded format or continue to process the record through us. The most effective way is through EvetRex. We process over 1,100 faxes and mailed items each day. On that page, okay, so on this page, so you'll see the Veteran Service Record, and it points to Request Service Record online or by fax. The next slide. So on this page, it brings you to two arrows. The first one shows you where you'll actually start your request. The second one points you to a video that walks you through the complete process. Next slide. So you will click on Start Request Online. You'll be presented with this screen. You'll have three choices. You can check the status of existing requests. You can make a new request. You can retrieve a response. So you would want to create a new request. So you want to click on Make a New Request. Next slide. So this is where you would log into id.me, and that will take you to the ID.me login page. You will enter your ID.me login information, and you just follow the prompts until you successfully log into ID.me, and it will bring you back to the EvetRex page. You will follow the instructions for submitting the request. It's really important that you provide as much information as possible because a lot of veterans have common names. So if you're looking for something from a family member and everyone has the Robert Johnson, the first, second, third, junior, so, and they all served, we really need as much specific information that you can provide. Next slide, please. You'll have a drop down and a pick list. So you'll select the branch of service, the service component, and the reason why the records are being requested and any additional details. Next slide. So on the Veterans Information page, it's important that you use the name the veteran used when they served. And again, provide as much information as possible. Next slide. On the upload authorization page, you can upload the SF-180. You can upload any written authorization, like you can also upload a proof of death, service numbers, any additional information that you would help us to locate a record. We follow the Privacy Act and Freedom of Information Act. So it's really important that we only will release guidance to the veteran, or if the veteran is deceased, to the next of kin. The military service departments have specific guidance on what they authorize NARA to release. Next slide, please. So you'll have an opportunity to view everything that you submitted, and you would read the acknowledgement, and you would click "This is not a robot," and you would submit the request. The confirmation page should appear, and then you definitely want to keep that number because if you happen to reach out to our customer service, you want to do a status of the request, you want to ask a question about that request, that number comes in hand. Next slide, please. So we try to have a 10-day cycle time, especially this is the one that we use for our separation document, and this is what our system is set up to do. We allow 2 days for the request to be entered into our case management and reporting system. We have a part that's pre-processing where we allow our technicians or the system to figure out if we have a record. We have individuals to search for the record, and you saw the picture of the stacks. That's where they go out to locate them. And then we give the technicians 3 days to make copies of the record, to digitize the record, to do any redactions of any third-party information, because oftentimes for some of the older records, and I'll say older because some of my records have this, where general orders have a number of names and social securities of fellow veterans. So we want to redact that and mail out our responses. So we try to do that within 6 to 10 days or less. For our separation documents, we're doing it pretty much in 6 days. Next slide, please. So this is a list of acronyms and specific electronics that are out there. We have access to most of them. The one that we do not have is HAMES. Next slide, please. And as I stated earlier, we do not have a backlog of pending cases. NPRC responds to 90% of its requests in 20 days or less. 60% of those comes from veterans that are looking for that separation document. And in those cases, we're responding to 95% of those in 10 days or less. And like I said earlier, we're doing it in mostly 6 days. The VA is our biggest customer, and they request anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 records. So our loan and transfer time for getting the records to the VA is 5 days, and we do it 96% in 5 days or less. We also process as far as the verification for medals and send entitlements to the service departments. Again, we do not issue medals, so if a veteran served in the Army and submitted a request to us, we would verify all the medals that they are entitled to, and then we would send the form back to the Army to let them know what the entitlements are. They'll verify it, and they will dispatch the medals to that veteran or their family member. Next slide, please. Okay, so also on our website, we have how to submit urgent requests. So we have a special team that deals with time-sensitive requests, those that are involving burial services, medical emergencies, homeless veterans seeking shelter. So we would want them to contact our customer service and fax the request to that telephone number that's there, the 0764. And if you have a question from our customer service, that telephone number is there, 314-801-0800. You can still submit urgent requests using eVetRex. We prefer that. That's quicker, especially if it's important. So please do that. Next slide, please. So I slightly touched on archival records, and I'll try to swiftly go through it a little bit more. So next slide, please. Okay, so pictured here is the Archivists of the United States at that time. In the late 90s, the National Archives and Records Administration determined that OMPFs was of enduring nature and that they would be maintained for the life of the Republic. As part of the appraisal process with NARA and the DoD, as far as what was be the appropriate offer date for transitioning records, we determined that accessioning or archiving would occur at 62 years. And at 62 years, the member has completed their obligated service and those records become open to the public. Next slide, please. Okay, so you may recognize this person here. So this is President Eisenhower. So we have a copy of his DD 214 and an award citation for the Legion of Merit. Next slide, please. And here's President Kennedy and an excerpt of his evaluation reports. And one of the things that characterizes him as relatively inexperienced at PT boat operations, which is hilarious because he's known for writing about PT boat operations. Next slide, please. This is also a picture of President Kennedy, and to my far left is a letter where he declines his pension, and the other one is a report of his casualty, which was sent to the National Archives to be included as part of his record. This is a picture of Steve McQueen. So your records are immortalized, good, bad, and ugly. So this document talks about the Marines catching a straggler, and Steve McQueen had to do some solitary confinement for that action. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a picture of James Earl Jones, the voice, the booming voice. He left the military to become an officer, to become an actor. And his DD 214 is there as well as his officer efficiency report. And this is Gene Hackman, who also served in the military, and there's are some of his documents as well. Next slide, please. And one of our most popular collections, of course, is Elvis Presley. So you see his fingerprints and his DD 214. Next slide. So the records are transferred to NARA legally. Physically, they are here. They will remain in place. They are just legally transferred from the service departments to NARA after 62 years of getting out of the service. And NPRC continues to expand those records to the public. Our archival staff are frequently posting additional information online as they as swiftly as they possibly can. Now, for anything that is fire related, I just wanted to share that we won't just reconstruct fire related records for benefits only is when we would do it. We would not do it for a genealogy. And we continue to follow the policy guidance that we do for all NARA holdings. Next slide. All right, so I made it to the end. I was rushing there because I wanted to give you all some time for some questions and answers. So our customer service telephone number is 314-801-0800. They are available Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Again, if you want to submit for a burial, please do it through eVetRex or via fax. We do not request through email. Okay, and now I have time for some questions. Okay, so what is the best way to find service and unit assignments for World War II era soldiers for the purpose of community history projects? So the challenge is that you would have to request each one individually. So we don't have a repository of a specific group of events. So if you know that this group of veterans were a part of a specific project or part of a specific unit that you want to look into, we would need to pull the records for each of those individuals.
Okay, we have a question in the room.
What caused the fire?
It is unknown. That is still a mystery today.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, well, we don't have any other questions in the room, and I don't see any other questions online. So I do want to say thank you so much to you, Ms. Box, for your presentation and for really just giving us all of this really important information for our veterans. If you're looking for your records, your service records, or the records of some of your family members, this is how you go about doing it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
All right, to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to learn more about our veterans records, you can reach out to Ms. Box or the contact information was on the screen. We would like to thank our program sponsors, the Eisenhower Foundation and the Jeffcoat Memorial Foundation. We invite you back next month on September 18th. That's the third Thursday, not the fourth Thursday. So please write that down, September 18th. We will welcome Dr. Bob Smith for an in-person presentation on notable Kansas veterans. So he will be here today or on that day. Spread the word. As a reminder, there are surveys on your tables that will help us improve. And if you are joining us virtually, there's a link for a digital survey in the program description. As well, on September 17th, we will have a naturalization ceremony right here in our courtyard. You are welcome to join us for that and welcome our new citizens. As always, you can find more information about our programs on our website, eisenhowerlibrary.gov, where you can also join our mailing list. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.